In a forest filled with mist, a wolf pup called Gracie runs for her life while being chased by a horrifying creature. During her escape, the animal ends up being cornered by the monster, forcing her to change her route once again. Quickly, Gracie runs to a wooden trunk and crosses the inside of the object so that the creature is trapped inside. Immediately afterwards, the pup runs to hide, allowing her to watch the great monstrosity transform back into her friends, who end up being defeated by her. Just then, Gracie is surprised by her grandmother Abigail, the leader of the pack, who begins to scold her for not taking her training seriously. Upon hearing this, the animal replies that it is only using its own techniques, and Abigail tells it that it shouldn't do that, since it can follow its survival manual in the forest. However, Gracie explains that this won't be possible, as the pack lives in nothing less than a large zoo, which is completely enclosed and protected from humans. After the conversation, the wolves come across the zoo truck, which is unloading a new animal. When she notices the strange behavior of the new creature, Gracie becomes worried, but she is not shaken by what she has just witnessed, as she doesn't believe that the animals can bring her any kind of danger. Later, the zoo closes, and during the night, a large meteor approaches planet Earth, destroying even one of the surrounding radio satellites. However, as soon as it passes through the atmosphere, the giant rock ends up becoming a small luminous stone, which, after colliding with one of the posts, ends up in the middle of the barn. Thanks to this, the pole is knocked against one of the walls, which is partially demolished, and on noticing the glow coming from the extraterrestrial object, a baby rabbit approaches to understand what it is. The animal then realizes that the object is nothing more than a small pink crystal, and because of its curious appearance, it decides to devour it. In doing so, the little rabbit is affected by an electric pulse, which causes it to fall to the ground petrified. Frightened by the hole the meteor has caused in her lair, Gracie goes outside, where she comes across a plant that has been incinerated by the extraterrestrial projectile. Very carefully, the wolf pup walks towards the barn and approaches the lighted opening, not even imagining that she is being watched by one of the biggest animals in the zoo. Inside, Gracie comes across several roots, which are becoming more and more intertwined between the beams, but the rabbits haven't even been woken up by the destruction, and are still sleeping normally. Upon arriving at the center of the site, the she-wolf comes across a large magical heart, and as soon as she approaches to investigate, she is surprised by a creature, which tries to grab her from inside the object. Despite this, Gracie manages to stop the grab, and realizes that it's nothing more than a pup's paw, which is trying to reach her at any cost, managing to grab her tail. Desperate, the she-wolf runs around the barn trying to get rid of the monster, and after making it let go of her body, she runs towards one of the windows. At the same time, the creature tries to chase its prey, but to no avail, and before it can grab it, the sinister monster is trapped inside. Soon after, Gracie realizes that her grandmother Abigail was right, as her species can be threatened by any kind of predator. At that moment, the she-wolf ends up falling off the platforms, and after recovering, she is surprised by a gigantic lion, which has been freed by the destruction of the meteor. Trying to stay alive, Gracie makes her evasive movements, which cause one of the scaffolding ropes to tangle in her leg and lift her up at high speed. Thanks to this, the lion ends up being captured along with his prey, causing them both to be suspended by the rope. Furious, the predator frees himself from the trap with his claws, and before he can eliminate his target, he is hit by several tranquilizer darts, which cause him to lose consciousness instantly. Realizing that she is safe, Gracie begins to mock the lion, but soon after, she is also hit by the zoo employee. Hours later, the pup wakes up in a small cage inside a laboratory, where she is welcomed by Xavier. Confused, Gracie asks how the animal is watching TV freely, and he replies that he has learned to unlock the padlocks on his cages after being imprisoned so many times. At that moment, the pair discover that the lion has also been put in that ward with them. He then starts scolding Gracie, saying that she is to blame for everyone being in that place. Trying to find a way to escape, the predator asks Xavier to unlock the padlock on his cage, but the she-wolf says they shouldn't do that, as they'd be eliminated in no time. Upon hearing this, the lion reveals that they won't be able to escape from the zoo without his help, as he is the only one who knows how to use the employees' access cards. However, Xavier asks why the predator wants to flee so badly, and the animal is surprised to notice that none of his companions seem to care about getting out of that place. Gracie explains that she just wants to return to her pack so that she can warn them about the appearance of the scary egg, and upon hearing this, the lemur becomes anxious, saying that this could be the beginning of a great apocalyptic catastrophe. In the middle of the big barn, the creature from another world is finally born, and uses the body of the eliminated rabbit to get around. The creature then devours one of the sleeping animals, and after a few seconds, it spits it back out, causing the little one to turn into an out-of-control zombie. Soon after, the little monster bites one of the adult animals, which turns into another of the insane zombies, starting a huge outbreak among all the animals in the barn. Now that he has been able to create his army of alien zombies, the sinister rabbit destroys the doors, allowing all the infected animals to run around the zoo. In the great primate habitat, the gorilla begins to hear strange noises coming from the pipe, and when he checks to see what's going on, he comes across several glowing eyes watching him. Before they can react, the animals are surprised by the alien zombies, who begin to infect each one of them with their bites, increasing the size of their army more and more, trying to prevent his monkey companion from being caught. The gorilla rushes to rescue him, using the objects around him to avoid the creature's attacks. However, the animal ends up being betrayed by his friend, who throws himself into the pipe and abandons the primate, who is attacked by dozens of crazed rabbits. In a panic, the monkey runs towards the veterinary ward, where he encounters a capybara, who orders him to close the door immediately. At that moment, Felix notices an ostrich coming towards them and tries to close the door so that they don't get caught by the infected rabbit. Despite this, the animal manages to get to the office and scolds his companions for their cowardly attitude. During the conversation, the trio realize that they are facing a she-wolf and a lion, causing them to be terrified of being locked up with their biggest predators. After being freed, Gracie grabs the little capybara and orders them to explain what is happening outside. When she finds out about the zombie outbreak, the she-wolf is terrified, at which point they are surprised by the infected gorilla, who begins to destroy the door. Desperate, the animals run to try to escape from the office, and Gracie tries to hold the door so that she can buy time until everyone is safe. Wanting to prevent everyone from being eliminated, the lion hits the railing with his own body, causing the cage to fall to the ground and allowing him to break free. As a result of the object falling, the zombie gorilla's arm ends up being removed, causing the animals to start being attacked by it. The lion quickly grabs the piece of the monster with his mouth, and after neutralizing the threat, he takes the access card. The problem is that the tranquilizer gun ends up falling to the ground, causing it to fire in the direction of the predator, which falls to the ground at the same time. Despite this, the animals use the card to open the door and run so that they can survive the attack. Even alone, Gracie refuses to leave the lion behind and tries to pull it out with her mouth while the zombies finish destroying the entrance. Before they were caught by the horde of creatures, the she-wolf managed to close the metal door, and after a few minutes, the animal woke up in the middle of the corridor, where it realized it was being dragged by the pup. Realizing that her friend has woken up, Gracie removes the dart from his body and says that she will give him the access card if she is escorted to her habitat so that she can be reunited with her family. Although he doesn't like the idea, the lion has no choice but to accept the deal, so it is revealed that his name is Dan. In the underground corridors of the zoo, the group of surviving animals try to cross the place without being seen, but without success, and after stepping on a noisy toy, they are noticed by one of the zombies. In a rage, the monster sets off in the direction of its prey, and so that they won't be attacked, Xavier throws the object into the plumbing system, causing the creature to attach its head to the outlet of the pipe on the other side of the tunnels. The pair come across the toy in front of them, and when they squeeze it, Dan makes a loud noise, which is echoed throughout the corridor. This causes the zombies to be drawn to the survivors, who are surprised by the rabbit, who is crushed by his own creatures. Seizing their chance to escape, the pair run towards one of the ladders, allowing them to reach the outside through a manhole. However, while looking up into the trees, Gracie comes across one of the monkeys that has been infected by the zombies, and pushes Dan so that they can escape from the place. Thanks to this, the animals end up falling down a slide, which takes them to a large pool of toy balls. At that moment, they realize that something seems to be surrounding them, and they try to run away so that they won't be attacked. Before Gracie can be caught, Dan decides to go back into the pool and throws his friend out, but before he can get out, he is grabbed by the creature. What they didn't know was that it was actually Poot, play in that place at night. Believing that the little girl won't be able to survive on her own, Gracie says they should take her with them, and although Dan is reluctant, he agrees. Meanwhile, the group of animals arrive at the zoo's toy store, and Xavier tells them that from now on, they must be careful at all times, as they are facing a major zombie apocalypse. After a few minutes walking cautiously through the creatures around the site, the trio arrive at Gracie's habitat, where she begins to look for her family. Upon arriving at Abigail's lair, the she-wolf realizes that her grandmother has already been transformed into another of the monsters, and before she can react, she ends up being attacked. However, as she no longer has any teeth, the old woman can't even infect her granddaughter, and in order to neutralize the threat, Dan punches the creature in the face. Soon after, the trio is surprised by the Gracie brothers, who jump from the ceiling to attack their targets. Realizing that they will be easily eliminated if they remain there, Dan leads his companions away, causing them to be chased by the pack of zombie wolves. In the toy store, the animals start to go crazy due to the lack of food, and before they can figure out a way to get food, they decide that they will try to devour each other. The survivors then start throwing themselves from side to side, but in doing so, they bump into the central circuit breakers, causing all the lighting in the zoo to come back on. Knowing that their companions will be easily eliminated by being exposed, the animals try to turn off the lights again, but to no avail, and only the store has its power turned off. Thanks to this, the trio ends up being found by the great horde of monsters, forcing Dan to fight, using one of the monkeys to hit the zombies around him. Despite this, Felix refuses to help, and before they draw the monster's attention, he decides to block the store door with one of the shelves. Quickly, Dan and Gracie run through the zoo alongside Poot, but due to the large number of zombies, they become increasingly surrounded. So the she-wolf shouts for her friend to get ready to jump to the cable cars, and uses the larger infected as support to reach the cabin. Soon afterwards, Dan jumps through the zombies as fast as he can and manages to catch up with Gracie, allowing the trio to escape to safety, but at that moment, they come across the infected great gorilla. Desperate, they throw themselves to the ground to protect themselves from the monster's attacks, which ends up getting stuck in the window, causing the cabin to start swaying from side to side. A few seconds later, the cable car stabilizes, and wanting revenge for the loss of her family, Gracie hits the gorilla with a ferocious attack, removing its head from its body. Realizing that the zombie beast is still alive, Dan says they should get out of there as soon as possible, and they use the safety hatch to get outside. However, the trio ends up being chased by the gorilla, who tries to reassemble his body over and over again. During the chase, the surviving animals watch their companions through the toy store when they realize that they are being watched by some creature. At that moment, the group is surprised by a zombie kangaroo, which lunges at them, and so that they don't get caught, Xavier throws a can of soda at its head. This causes the animal to be knocked out, but as they approach to investigate the body, the survivors come across the monster's baby, which is running madly around the site. Thanks to this, they become increasingly frightened and gather together to avoid a surprise attack, without even imagining that the adult kangaroo has just woken up. On the cable car, Dan and Poot manage to escape from the cabin via the power cables, and when he notices that Gracie has been captured by the gorilla, the lion rushes to rescue his friend, hanging onto the monster's body. At the same time, the hippopotamus calf slides towards the pair, causing them all to fall to the ground along with the creature, whose body is dismantled along with a zombie giraffe. After recovering from their fall, the trio prepare to leave, but before they can do so, they hear heavy footsteps coming towards them. At that moment, the zombie gorilla appears in front of the animals, who are terrified to realize that the monster has merged with the giraffe, creating a gigantic apocalyptic creature. Noticing the access card in one of the colossal zombie's legs, Dan lunges at his enemy, who manages to grab him easily, but his movements cause the badge to be thrown upwards. Gracie then jumps up to retrieve the object, and before she can escape, the lion is being dragged away by the monster, which is trying to devour it at any cost. Furious, Dan attacks with his claws, and after removing the creature's head, he realizes that they are about to fall off the building. Before it could be eliminated by the fall, the animal jumped back onto the roof, and Gracie was relieved to see that her friend was okay. However, during all the chaos, Dan ends up being infected by the giant zombie, and before he is completely transformed, he shouts for the she-wolf to run away. Gracie quickly throws Poot into one of the trees and tries to convince her friend to return to his normal state. At that moment, the animals end up destroying part of the glass ceiling, causing the she-wolf to fall into the pantry room. Soon afterwards, Dan emerges from the ceiling and attacks Gracie, who flees desperately as the predator chases her furiously. Trying to stop the attacks, the she-wolf climbs the shelves on the wall and ends up dropping large quantities of soap into the tap water, causing the sink to start overflowing. During the outbreak, Dan tries to devour Gracie, but he ends up destroying the platform and falling headfirst into the water. Desperate, the pup runs to rescue his friend, and after a few seconds, the lion regains consciousness, where he realizes that he is no longer infected. Realizing that soap and water can cure zombies, Gracie says they can come up with a plan to save the zoo, but Dan refuses and orders her to give him back the card. Irritated, the she-wolf rebukes her friend's behavior, but he doesn't give a damn and leaves. However, before he can escape, Dan is surprised by Felix, who steals his access card and leaves. Halfway there, the monkey is surprised by a group of zombie frogs, who try to capture him with their tongues. Panicked, the animal tries to run away from the creatures, but he is quickly surrounded, and before he can counterattack, Felix is captured by Dan, who drags him away and retrieves his card. Trying to convince the predator, the animal says that they can form a duo, and realizing that he is being as cowardly as the chimp, the lion decides to hand over the object so that he can stay with his friends. So Felix runs to the gates of the zoo, and after hundreds of attempts, the animal manages to figure out how to open the door, but before he can escape, he is attacked by a group of frogs. At the toy store, Gracie and Poot meet up with the trio of survivors, and reveal that they have a plan to end the apocalypse. The she-wolf explains that she will look for something to attract the zombies, while the capybara collects the soap boxes, and the ostrich draws the attention of the infected elephant, who will be snared by Xavier. In the middle of the zoo, Gracie appears with several cans of paint, attracting the attention of all the zombies around, who are drawn to Dan's old habitat. However, the she-wolf realizes that her plan hasn't worked as expected, as none of her friends have been able to do their jobs properly. Thanks to her distraction, the pup ends up slipping from the top of the tower, attracting the attention of the zombie rabbit, who uses the frogs to climb the steep rock. Before she could be eliminated by the leader of the monsters, Gracie heard the roar of Dan, who ran furiously towards her. Realizing that they have a chance of winning, Xavier pulls himself together and begins to tame the elephant while the lion runs over everything in front of it, allowing him to help the capybara. The animals then jump out of the cart, causing the soap boxes to fall to the ground, and soon after, the elephant crashes into the zoo's water tank. The giant reservoir ends up falling to the ground, and in a panic, the monster runs away, taking Xavier with it. Before his friend is taken into the midst of the zombies, the ostrich flies at high speed towards him, managing to rescue him at the last second. As a result, the large box of water falls into Dan's habitat, creating a huge wave of soap that hits all the creatures. In order to finish off her enemy, Gracie kicks the rabbit in the face and it falls into the water, laughing as it sinks into the pool. Relieved, the animals gather to celebrate their victory, but at that moment, they realize that the plan doesn't seem to have worked, and the leader of the zombies begins to rise, revealing a colossal alien creature. Before she can react, the capybara is crushed by one of the monster's paws, and Gracie screams for her friends to run for their lives. Trying to save Poot, Dan throws her up, but this only makes the situation worse, and the calf is easily eliminated by the creature's hands. Devastated at having ended the life of the hippopotamus baby, the lion cries out in despair and is rescued by Gracie, who takes him to one of the stores. With ease, the creature crosses the site with its body, causing a great trail of destruction throughout the zoo. Poot ends up being ejected during one of the monster's steps, and now that he's free, he looks for his friends. After climbing out from under the rubble, Dan rushes to rescue Gracie, and while they are trying to recover, they are surprised by the hippopotamus baby, who destroys the wall with ease. Soon afterwards, the little girl rolls towards them, and when she comes across a snow globe, she decides to devour it. Thanks to this, the toy starts playing Christmas music, bringing Poot back to normal in a few seconds. Gracie then realizes that the cure for zombies is not soap, but music, and remembers the radio that was playing in the pantry during her fight against Dan. The she-wolf says they have another chance to save everyone, but suddenly the lion is captured by the giant zombie. Quickly, Gracie runs towards the center of the zoo and tries to manipulate the hands of the clock so that the music of the bell starts ringing. Realizing that her friend needs time to complete her objective, Poot decides to confront the colossal monster, and runs around the place to get its attention. Despite this, the baby is easily cornered by the creature, and at the same time, Gracie is found by Felix, who is preparing to eliminate her. Before she was caught, the she-wolf managed to position the hands, starting a theme song and saving their lives at the last second. Thanks to the melody, the body of the colossus begins to be destroyed, causing all the animals to be freed from the zombification. Excited, the survivors sing together to rescue each member of the zoo, and the music finally manages to defeat the creature, which falls to the ground. Finally, the evil rabbit is transformed back into its original form, and the animals celebrate their victory with their friends, as they have just prevented a great alien zombie apocalypse. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.